Hello my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks workshop with a project that, to be truthful, I absolutely don't want to do. But I didn't ask for this, I didn't agree to this, it just kind of showed up here one day. At the first several attempts we tried to send it back, we couldn't get a hold of the person, and it just showed up here unsolicited. I don't work on classical instruments, and that's what this is. It's a classical instrument. You might say, well, what's the difference? Why can't you work on these? Well, they're just made so different, especially the good classical instruments. Now, this one happens to be, I don't know, I'd put it in the lower category. I can't really think this is a high-end classical at all. But, and because of that, I think it might be made more the traditional style. But it's not made really the normal traditional style. I can see pegs in here where they've pegged it through, and I can see the pegs coming through the block on the inside. The problem is it needs a neck reset, and it needs it really bad. We finally got a hold of the lady, and this was after many months, and she turned out to be a really super nice lady. Very, very, very nice. And then, you know, I said, well, I'm sorry, but we're just going to have to send it back. Well, now it's laid around here a while longer, quite a while actually. I'm almost embarrassed to say it's probably been here a year by now. And, you know, now this is different than laying around trying to work on it for a year, like that other Gibson. That was here for nearly a year, but I was working on it most of the time. This has just been laying around. By rights, I should just send it back, and that's probably what I should do, but because she was so nice, and because we've dropped the ball and let this thing sit around forever, I think I'm just going to fix it free of charge and send it back to her. Try to make it up to her a little bit, but I'll probably hate myself for agreeing to do that, because, you know, you can see here already, the neck angle is way below where it needs to be. The problem is, how do you even start to fix something like this? And the truth is, I don't know that I know how to fix it. They're made different than your standard. Come along for the ride, I'll figure something out. Well, I'll probably regret it, but here we go. I'm going to just start by taking the fingerboard off this thing, because it's going to need quite a bit to make this work. And I have my heater turned on, and it's still cold right now. I hope this goes easy, because typically whenever you try to do something nice for someone, it usually just backfires and just, you know, creates all kinds of issues. That's what you get for having a conscience, you know. Anyway, I'm going to do my best to try to fix this up, at least make it playable for the lady. You know, I knew that this is only a $140 guitar, so it's not worth my time and effort. I already know that, so you don't have to tell me. It's just the penalty you have whenever you have a conscience. That's all. And so I'm trying to fix it. And I'm just going to do it quick and dirty as I can do it. So don't expect much. I'm just going to try to get it done. Actually blistered the shellac right there. I didn't think it would do that. Of course, no good deed goes unpunished, that's for sure. That's just a black and white. No good deed goes unpunished.
Opal's got a little shop, coffee, tea, and soda pop, written on the faded window sign. Ruby and Pearl are her best friends. There you'll find the three of them, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30.
Looks like it's gonna make me work for every inch of it. Oh my gosh. Why is it getting harder? It was easy up to this point, and now it's got to get crazy hard. It's more or less blistering the finish, but it still isn't coming loose. I cannot believe it's that hard. It's just making a mess. I really wish I wouldn't have started it now. If it would have just came off, that would have been one thing. I wonder if this was put on with hide glue, because it's supposed to just come off easy when they're built with hide glue, and that would be the typical for a classical, should be hide glue. Obviously, this one is going to make me work for every little bit of kindness I'm trying to show. Oh my gosh. This is not right. Well, because of that, I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to pull this fret, cut this off. I wasn't going to cut this one off. I was just going to take it all the way off, but I'm going to cut it off. It's not worth my time and effort otherwise. This does have some sort of an abbreviated dovetail. I just went ahead and cut this off and then just broke it loose. And you can see that some of the laminations are coming out of this. This appears to be a plywood top. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, based on what I'm seeing here. It's, you know, incredibly cheaply made, actually. So I'm just going to try to get it apart as quick as I can and get the neck reset where we can make this thing halfway playable. You can see the glue is just balled up in here. I'm just trying to get the glue out. Just a bunch of glue. And I mean, I could steam it, but I figure I might as well get this glue out first before I steam it.
You can set a watch by their routine. Classic small town Norman Rockwell scene.
Got most of the glue up at the top there. I don't know if I can see any movement in the neck joint. A little tiny whisper maybe. But I think I'm just going to get the steam out and start steaming this. These pegs that were drilled in here, they were put in after the case because they're off center. They're definitely not from the factory. They're not going to make anything any easier, so I'm going to go ahead and drill those out before I start steaming. I wish they were drilled center. That would make it look better. But I didn't create the problem. I'm just trying to fix it, as I say. So I'm going to put a center punch about in the center of that dowel. Dowels are actually hard to drill out because the drill likes to follow the grain, and you never know how the grain is in these things. So I'm going to put a small bit in first and drill a small pilot hole first. And then I'm going to try to drill all the way through. And I'm going to try to look at this and see if it looks like it's going straight or if it's going crooked. I would say for sure it's going crooked. It looks like these holes are almost on center and these are off center, so it's drilled in at a slight angle toward the center. That's what it looks like to me. So I'm going to try to drill at that angle. Kind of think I did, but I don't see a hole because there's so much glue. I'm going to leave the bit in there and see if I can look inside and see. No, I don't think the bit was long enough. I've either got to back the bit out some more, which I guess the bits went inside this thing. Tighten it down some more. We'll try that again.
They talk about the wheres and wins, a little gossip now and then about who's doing what, maybe why. You mean to tell me you don't know about what's her name and so? Can you believe that Oakwood's still alive?
This one here, it came out high. I'm in the center, but I'm high on this one for some reason. So I'm going to, well, let me, when you turn it over, what's high? Actually, it would be low from this angle, so I need to angle back up a little bit. Alright, now I'm just going to take a bit that's actually bigger than those, but hopefully a dowel size that I can find. those look like they're probably quarter, so maybe I should just try the quarter. Looks like most of, I would say 90% of each dowel is gone. We're doing pretty good that way. I think I'm just going to get the steamer out now and start steaming the heck out of this thing. Okay, I've got my little hot plate out with my steamer on there. You notice I have the nozzle pointed away from me. If that would happen to blow off, you know, then at least it's going to blow the steam and stuff away from me. So that's an important thing. I don't expect any trouble. I've only had one problem, and that was only because I had this nozzle blocked off. It couldn't breathe. And as long as you keep this open, you'll be able to hear the steam coming out, and the pressure will be released that way. So it's usually not much of a problem. It's only when you block this off that you could have a real problem. My hot plate doesn't get super hot. It heats up and then it cools off and heats up and cools off. So you know, it kind of helps you with that too. It's going to take a little while, so I'll show you what it looks like once we start producing steam. We have steam coming out at a pretty good clip right now. And I've got a towel under this in case it leaks out. I'm not too worried about any kind of damage or any kind of, you know, looks. I just want to get this thing apart and get it fixed and make it playable. As I said, it's not worth spending a ton of money and time on, so I'm going to do it as quick and dirty as I can do it. I'm just moving it back and forth in this slot to try to even it out. I think it's doing pretty well on its own. I don't think I need to do much. I'm hoping I'll start seeing something coming out these holes. Hopefully not on the inside. Now that I think about that, I better look. Yeah, I don't see anything on the inside yet. Doesn't mean it won't happen. Well, this is kind of like watching paint dry, so if I see anything happening, I'll show it to you. Well, just after I turned the camera off, I thought, well, I'll wiggle the neck, and sure enough, the neck is wiggling pretty good. So it won't be long, I don't think. By the wiggling like that, steam gets into more places, the moisture gets into more places, so it's important to wiggle it. That really helps. Yep, it's really wiggling a lot now. You can probably see it. I'm hoping that'll cause it to come out of here pretty quickly. I can see a joint, you know, a glue joint along here, and it's been glued, so I'm going to see if I can cut that glue a little bit.
Their own little corner of the world. Opal, ruby, and
Okay, you can see I've got this on here, and it's a steel bar pushing on the heel of that neck. So I'm hoping I can just twist this until it just pulls it out of there. Sometimes you just wishful thinking. Yeah, well, that's not helping. I just wiggled it a little bit, and I thought that would make it better, but I think I broke something, to be truthful. Again, I'm not too worried about breaking much. I just want to get it out of there. And the quicker I can get it out of there, the better I like it. I'm going to tap right here on this, trying to shock it loose on that neck block. I don't know. As usual, it's got to give me trouble. Yeah, I think it's breaking. I'm going to put some more juice to it. Oh well. Why would it come easy? Well, I turned the steam back on because, yeah, as usual, it's got to punish me and not let me get it out easy, even though it's pretty much broken loose. I can see that the neck heel has cracked, so I'm going to have to repair that. I tell you, it's easier to repair stuff, though. It's just hard to get it apart. Getting it apart is the hard part. If you can get it apart, I can repair it. I'm not too worried about the repair end of it. If it comes apart in 3 pieces, I'd rather have that just as long as it comes apart. It's starting to lift a little bit, I think, but only a little bit. I've been putting this in the holes that we drilled down here too, underneath here, to try to inject a little moisture into those areas. You can hear it coming out on the inside in there, so I know it's, I mean, on the crack is what I mean. You can see it coming out of the crack area, so I know it's getting in there. So, I don't know, I'm just tempted to just horse it till it breaks or comes loose, one of the two. I'm not too sure I care at this point. It'll be fine once it comes apart. It'll be fine when I can put it back together. Yeah, it's starting to lift out now. I think it won't be long now. I can see it coming out. So, like I said, I think it's going to come out in 2 or 3 parts. Okay, I think we're done with the steam. Can throw this to the floor here for now. And you can see it's lifting here now, so I think it's going to come on out now. Yep, it's coming. It's out of there. Now, I still think it broke. I think it's going to be in 2 or 3 pieces, and that's okay. Like I said, I don't care how many pieces it's in. I just want to get it fixed. There you go. It actually didn't, well, it kind of cracked right in here. Didn't come completely apart. That part is not an issue. It's apart now. Now we can reset it and get it set to go back together. So while that's drying and everything, I'm going to go to take a nice long lunch. When we get back, we'll start putting this thing back together. This has been sitting for a couple of hours now, and quite honestly it was still damp, so I took a heat gun and I started drying it with the heat gun, and it's pretty dry. I noticed this shim was down inside here, so this shim indicates to me that somebody's already worked on this at least once, or maybe that shim was put in from the factory. I don't know for sure, but obviously somebody worked on it because they drilled these holes in it. I don't know if the shim happened at the same time or not. Really doesn't matter. Just going to get it put back together as quick as I can and make it work as it is. It's a lot of the siding, the sides are coming loose here from the block. This block that's in there is really cheap. It's not even a good piece of wood. It's really sad that they build them like this, but you know, what do you expect for an inexpensive instrument? But let's see if we can get it together. Another interesting thing is that there's a nail driven in there and bent over. I don't know where that came from or how it got in there, but you wouldn't typically see that in any kind of guitar, let alone a classical. I've been cleaning this up off camera. I've got the joints cleaned up some. I wouldn't say they're cleaned up a lot. And I thought I'd just see how it fits back together. And the answer is it doesn't. I have to clean up this joint more. There's a lot of junk in this. It's mostly just scraps of wood and just junk. And glue and junk like that. So I got to get this all cleaned up too. Well, I straightened that nail up and pulled it up there where you can see it. I truly don't know how they got that nail in there, because there's no room on this side. I don't know, and I don't see a seam where they could have, unless they just put this tag on there. I don't get how they did that, how they got that nail in there, unless they resharpened it after they drove it in there, cut the head off and resharpened it. Maybe it just pulls out. I don't know. I don't know why it would be in there. I really don't. I'm going to see if I can pull it out just to get it out of there. Oh, I see now it's curled up. It probably comes under this dot. It must have went down at an angle. That's what I'm guessing. Somebody probably pulled this dot out, drove that nail in at a toenail angle. Well, I guess I'll just cut it off, because we are not going to use that. Never quits. There we go. All right. And I'll drive it down below the surface. So it's down below the surface now. So that's what happened. I'm sure they pulled this dot out, put that nail in at an angle. Oh my goodness, the things you see with these kinds of repairs. Why anybody would have done all these repairs to this thing when it's really pretty cheap to begin with, I'll never know. Why I'm bothering with it, I don't think I know either, except for the fact that my conscience was bothering me for keeping it so dang long. And all of this is loose, so I've got to get the CA glue and glue these sides back. Seems like this CA glue never holds whenever you're trying to do something like this, and you always have to do it twice. The only good news is that it holds better the second time. If it'll even get in the joint is the main thing. For whatever reason today, I cannot get that glue to go where I'm aiming it. It will not go there. Eventually I'll have all the broken mess put back together so that I can put the neck back on this thing. But until you get all these loose ends fixed and all these miscellaneous problems fixed, you're just wasting your time putting the neck back on it. And the other thing is that the bottom heel of this is swelled out much bigger than the top, so that's going to mess up the angle just by that. So I don't know, I'm going to have to cut this off. It's just messed up. It's sticking out past the back of the guitar. I don't know why stuff like this is made this way. Well, the truth is, this thing has been such a pain. I've done most of the fitting up off camera. I don't honestly feel like it's fitting all that well, but I think it's fitting well enough that I can go ahead and put the neck back in it. I'm going to prop it into the proper position, glue it into position, and then drive wedges in here and glue those in and call it good enough, because a $150 guitar is already taking $200 or $300 worth of my time. So I'm just going to glue it back in place, wedge it into shape, and hope it works. Get the glue everywhere, because I am going to, there's going to be some voids in here, and again, I don't want the creep, but I'm going to fill those voids with wedges and things like that for the most part. That's about as good as it can be glued, I think. So let's put it together, and hopefully we can get it squeezed back together to where it belongs. Yeah, that helped. One of the tuning keys things fell off of it. I'll have to figure that out in a minute. I don't have time to deal with that right now. Okay. So, how am I going to deal with this angle? I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's not even close right now. It's not. But I think if I force it down and put some wedges in here and glue them in place, I think it's going to work. And that's kind of what I'm going to do. Not my favorite project, but on the other hand, it's as good as it needs to be, I think. I don't know. I'm going to see if I can cut some special wedge, or some special wedge for this. I think I'll try to cut one the full width of this. What I'm doing is I'm going to put this wedge in here and, glue it in place, tap it down until this neck angle fits better. And that's pretty close right there, but I'm going to go a little more. I think that's pretty close. So I'm cleaning up this glue joint, and it really doesn't look too bad. And I'm going to saw off this extra piece of wood here. I hope I am. There we go. Got that off, out of the way. And I'm going to use that to tap that wedge down just a little bit more. Tap the heel down a little bit more. And I got to make sure that the disappearing neck heel, which is, there it is still going to match up. Yeah, that looks fine. It looks good enough to me. I think it's going to be all right. Now let's check the neck angle again. And that's just about perfect. That's just about perfect. So I don't know. I guess I'm just going to let that sit like that. I think I'm going to get a web clamp and go around the heel of that neck. I'm just going to let it sit like that. I got this web clamp on there to help hold the heel of the neck down. There's a fairly good gap right here, but that's because the sides on this thing are bowed. I can't help that. I'll just have to fill that with a little piece of wood or something later. In fact, I could maybe just find a little wedge and pop it in there now and let it be drying. So I'll find something to fill that in with. Yeah, to fill this little void right here, I'm just taking a piece of maple, putting it in there, and I'm just going to more or less just let it sit there and get hard overnight, and then I'll just trim it off where you can't really see it. If anything, it's probably a hair high, but it's probably better leaving it a hair high because it'll probably pull down. So I'm just going to leave it right there for now, and we'll check on it in the morning. Well, I'm going to go ahead and glue this tail on here too. I've been fitting it dry and it seems to fit okay, so it's time. It's just get it on there and get it over with, and that way tomorrow I can just put the strings on this thing and get it shipped out. This guitar set overnight, and I'm ready to try to put it back together. I had filled this, and then this got bent out of shape, I guess because I was doing other things and didn't realize it. But it filled the crack, and once it's sawn off, you'll never know it that it was crooked. Get rid of that, and then I'll have to trim it off on the edges, and then we'll stain that a little bit to make it match a little bit. So I'll do some more work on this, mostly off camera, just cosmetics, and then we'll probably put these dowel pins back in there just to fill the holes, and we'll just do a few more things like that. Okay, I'm going to do a light fret dressing on this. I guess before I do that though, I probably should go ahead and put this fret back in that I took out. So let me do that. We'll run the fret saw through here lightly just to clean out the glue mostly. Well, I'm hoping I can drive it back down in there. It's trying to be a little cantankerous. That seems like it went just fine. It seems solid. Now, there is a considerable drop off here because of the neck angle. This is a fairly high bridge, so there is going to be more neck angle on an instrument like this. So this drop off is much more obvious, and I'm not even going to really worry about these up here. These frets are just being found to clean them up a little bit, more for decoration than anything. And then I'll just recrown them rather quickly with the recrowning file. I'll take some 600 now, and I'll do each fret. I'll just go ahead and lay this over the frets like this, and just do this. Because this fretboard is not your standard, I just do it this way rather than scuff up the fretboard, even though this fretboard's in pretty bad shape. At least I won't add to the problems. I'm not going to try to reclaim the fretboard or clean it up and refinish it, because that's just way beyond the scope. That's pretty cleaned up. I don't feel any problems on them now. They feel okay. So I got to get a nut and a saddle made for this, and we'll see if we can even get it strung up and playable. Decided to go ahead and get these holes re-drilled in here. They were open, but the glue, I'm sure, got in there a little bit. That way I can just go ahead and put new dowels in there and call it good. Off camera, I turned down a piece of dowel rod. This was probably a 5/16. I turned it down to a 1/4 inch. I already installed the first one in the hole there, and I thought I'd just show you how I was doing that. Since it's a through hole, you can just put glue on here and drive it in. If it were a blind hole, sometimes you need to cut a little groove to let the air escape, because driving it into a blind hole, it won't go to the bottom a lot of times because of the air pressure built up in there. But in this case, it should be no problem. Just get enough glue on there to coat it, start it into the hole like this. And then what I do in this case is I'm putting my finger in there, covering that hole, and making sure I can get my finger over that hole. And then I'll just tap this in place until I feel it. There it is on the inside. And now I'll just cut that off. Just break it off like that. Now then I'll just take a file or something and just file the ends of it off to flush. And you got to be careful, because you can make a bigger mess here if you're not careful. But I'll show you what that looks like when I'm finished. So there's what she looks like up close. Got her smoothed off. You can barely tell it's there. So, and again, I didn't put those dowels in originally. Someone else did that. I did mess this up a little bit right here trying to get this off. So I'm going to see if I can clean that up just a little bit. Just see if I can sand off the worst of it there. That's almost good enough like it is. But I think I'll just put a little bit of this Be Good oil on there, and I think that'll make it disappear. And sure enough, it does. It pretty much makes it disappear. So you can see at least a little bit of a hint of it now, but that's acceptable for what we're dealing with here. And now I've got to make a nut and a saddle, and then hopefully get this thing out of the shop. So what I'll do first is I'll just go ahead and get this saddle glued in place and let it be setting up. I'll glue it with this Formula 560. This is canopy glue. I believe this is a man-made nut. It looks like bone, but when I ground on it a little bit, I'm pretty sure it's man-made. So I'm just going to get it there, get it set in place. Hopefully it will be good enough to make a nut for this thing out of. Not really sure if I could clamp it. It wouldn't hurt anything, but it's kind of hard to clamp a nut. So I'll just try clamping it like this and see if it'll do its thing. We'll let that set for an hour and get hard, and then we'll go ahead and finish. While that's doing that thing, I'll try to make some sort of a saddle for this. The saddle slot that's here is just absolutely pathetic. I really don't know what they had in there, but it couldn't have been much. Really don't know how to start with that, but I think I'll just take this little flat file. It's got an edge on the bottom edge, and just try to file a flat slot here. is right now this slot is anything but uniform. It's got deep spots and just a mess. In fact, this isn't working very good because it's not a very good file, really. I don't know what to do with that. And I don't know if I've got a file that's going to work for that, honestly. This is the closest thing I've got to working, and if it don't work, I don't know what to do about it. I'll have to do some more thinking on that. Well, I found this piece of bone saddle here that I can put in this thing. Quite honestly, this piece of bone saddle is probably worth almost as much as the guitar. So I hate to use it in one way, but in another way, it'll probably be just fine. Get it in there, make this thing work. Problem is that this saddle slot is so pathetic. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere near the bottom, and I've tried filing it out, and that's not working very good. Someone has just messed it up big time. I don't have a good way to re-slot it other than to spend a lot of time, and I don't really want to spend any time on this. But I guess I'm going to have to, because I don't know of anything else to do, because this isn't going to work sitting up there flopping. It's going to have to be more stable than that, and then I can glue it in place. Well, I've got this lined up about as good as I think I can line it up. Now I guess I'll try to plunge it down to a, well, I'm not even sure yet how I'm going to do that. So I guess I'll just leave it where it's at for now. Get her going here and figure it out as I go. And I think I got problems. I don't think I've tightened it up enough. Now that I think about it, I think I had only just put it in there temporarily to check the depth, and sure enough it wasn't tight, so I've got it tight now though. So let's try that again. And I might have to adjust this a little bit because I think it's a little close this way.
Each a precious gem in this old world, opal, ruby, and pearl.
That seemed to do the trick. That got me a flat bottom, and I think a slot that's about the right size. It's a little loose, but on the other hand, I think I can fill that in with my CA glue and call that thing good enough. The slot was already too big anyway, but now it's deep enough that I can get enough purchase on this thing. I think it'll be fine. It's a good 1/16 of an inch deeper than it was, and the bottom looks flat, and I think I can make it stay now. Now the trick is I want to try to cut some of this off because I don't need all this height, I don't think. So I'm just going to go over there and knock it down to about that top line there. Okay, the way I do spacing on a guitar neck is all by eye, and you probably think, well, that's just hokey, but if you go by my method, it works pretty good. It's a little bit cumbersome. I just approximate where I think the next string should go, and it's just an approximation. So I just make that little mark on the paper, and I just move it across. And I can probably tell already I don't have it wide enough. I'll go ahead and mark them, and it'll just give me an idea of how far off I am. Okay, so I've got quite a bit of space left over here. So really what I just need to do is move my mark over a little bit. It doesn't take much because every little bit adds up. And then I'll just erase these marks here and try it once more. Usually I get it on the second try, but that's not 100%. Sometimes it takes a couple more tries, you know. So let's try that right about there. Try to make sure you line it up really good. That's pretty close. What I can do is, as I cut these now, I can cheat them that way just a fraction. Alright, so I don't know what gauge these are. They don't really say. These are Labella strings. Labella is a pretty good string company, actually. You don't hear about them very much. I really like the Labella mandolin strings, but I quit using them simply because the serving kept buzzing on me. It didn't happen every time, but sometimes it did. Okay, this is a 43, so I'm going to see if I can find something a little bigger than a 43. A 56 is bigger than I need. So a 42 is what I have here. I guess I could go with a 42 and just kind of wallow it out. I've got a 50. A 50 wouldn't be bad. You really can't hardly tell that it's that much bigger. So I think I'll just go ahead and use the 50, and I'll approximate the peg head height, the peg head angle. I'm not going to go very deep. And see, that looks like that fits it really well to me. I'd much rather be too small than too large. I guess I'll go ahead and use this small end down here to tie it with. That's what I guess they're for. I'm not an expert on putting on classical strings, I'll be honest with you. Okay, the way I'm going to do this is pull it through here like so. I'm going to go back around here, around the string, and over the top but through the loop once, and then over the top and through the loop a second time, like that. And then typically you have enough string left over to go to the next, to reach to the next string, or approximately. So I'm just going with that for now, and that'll be fine. And that'll hold it there, it won't come loose. Then on the other end, I go ahead and poke it through, down through the tuning key, and then I'll pull it back up through here. You know, you can leave different amounts of slack. On a classical, I'm going to leave a little more than I would on your average. Now I'm going to, the first wrap or two, I'm going to go that way. In other words, I'm going to wrap and have the string actually going toward the center. That's not the way you want to end up, but that's the way I start. So I'm just going to start right there, and I'm just going to do this by hand, turn it a little bit till I get this locked in, like so. I'm probably leaving a little more slack than you need, but I get one full wrap and then maybe about another half like this. And then what I do is I cross back over this string like so. Maybe you can see I'm crossing back over, and then I wind it the rest of the way toward the tuning key. And because this is kind of complicated, I'm going to use a mechanical winder here. And I do it kind of slow so that I can really guarantee that the winding is going to look good. There you go. So you can cut the rest of this off fairly short because it's not going to go anywhere. Once you wrap back over the top of it, that locks it in place. I'll take my little nippers and I leave maybe a ½ inch sticking out, something like that. I think that's enough for the demonstration. I'll go ahead and put the rest of the strings on there and show you what it looks like, and we'll play it once we get her strung up. Well, here's how she turned out. Oh, for a little cheapy guitar, it sounds fine. It plays good. The action's actually really low on it. It's just about perfect, really. I didn't measure it, but I don't know. I'm going to guess it in the 100 range, which is probably about right for a, electric, for a classical guitar. It's actually about 90 for the bass and about 70 for the treble, so that's pretty darn low. You know, that'll give it room to grow. If it ever grows bigger again, it'll be just fine. Well, hope you enjoyed watching that. I don't think it's gonna give her any trouble for a long time to come.